Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 16th meeting of the Executive Evaluation Committee from the CalHFA Board of Directors. As usual, our meeting materials are available in the chat or on the control bar on the side of your screen under handouts. We also have them available on the CalHFA website at calhfa.ca.gov. The meeting is being recorded and will be shown on our website post-meeting. And we will go ahead and get started. I'll turn this over to Michael Gunning.
All right, thanks, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Secretary Castro Ramirez. Let's start with a roll call.
Okay. Secretary Castro Ramirez?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mr. Gunning?
Here.
And we have a full quorum.
All right. Looking at the minutes, I can hardly believe it was a year. It feels like yesterday, Jonathan, right, that we met, but it's been a year, and what a year. Anyone have a chance to look at the minutes or any comments or edits to the minutes?
I move that we adopt the minutes.
Yeah.
Good. Motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, minutes
Good.
approved.
Great. In terms of comments for this morning, as you guys can anticipate, this won't be a very long meeting. I think the idea here is really to get in the frequency. Had Tina been here a year, we'd be starting this process. And by now, Secretary Castro Ramirez, you're a professional, you're a pro at this. Jonathan, you too, we've done a few of these. So not a lot of comments here, but looking forward to Jennifer's comments and then any other thoughts we may have and any words of advice we'll have for Tina for the year as we start this process over in the next year. But that's all I have. Unless anyone else has comments, I'd certainly open the floor up. All right. Seeing none. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, members of the Executive Evaluation Committee. For the record, I'm Jennifer LaBeouf, Director of Administration at CalHFA. I wanted to take just a minute to officially sort of close the loop with the committee on our recruitment efforts for our new Executive Director. As you all know, the governor appointed Tina Johnson Hall as CalHFA's new Executive Director, and she was sworn in on August 24th, 2021. The final step in her appointment will be her confirmation by the Senate. And although they have a full year from her appointment to confirm her, the Senate Rules Committee already reached out to start that process in September. They requested Tina's resume, some contact information, a release authorization, her current Form 700. And so we'll keep the board apprised as Tina progresses to confirmation.
Awesome. And Tina, particularly if we have to do anything in there in the Senate, we certainly want to help. So
Thank you.
keep me posted. We know our way around there a little bit. Awesome. Any questions for Jennifer on the process?
I just mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that of course we're very excited that Tina has received the notification regarding the confirmation process so quickly, 30 to 45 days after being appointed, and that's I think a real indication and reflection of the sense of importance, right, to have Tina confirmed. Our agency, our legislation unit, led by Amy Wilson, will be working very closely with Tina's ledge unit to make sure that we're lending support as she prepares both for the actual confirmation hearing, but also an opportunity to meet the members of the committee in advance. We know she's going to do extremely well. I know, Tina, you're going to do a fantastic job, and we're here to support you throughout the process.
Awesome. Ditto to all that. Thank you. With that, I think that's a nice segue, Tina, for some comments from you about first 90 days and sharing with the committee, and maybe some thoughts about when we do this again in a year.
I have a few more comments, Chair Gunning.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Summary of the evaluation process.
Okay.
So as again, you all know, the Executive Evaluation Committee typically meets in September to evaluate the performance of CalHFA's Executive Director. Obviously, since Tina had only been appointed in August, it did not make sense to evaluate her performance less than a month later. So we have scheduled the Executive Evaluation Committee to meet again in September of 2022. And at that meeting, the committee members will review the Executive Director Evaluation Scorecard to assess Tina and CalHFA's performance for her first year. As is our practice, following that meeting, the committee will then confer with the entire board regarding their assessment. And then finally, the board chair meets with Tina to go over her performance evaluation.
Anything else? We're done?
Yes.
Okay. Tina, now's your time.
So before we do that, you know, one of the things that over the last several years as we've been doing this process, we've always struggled with trying to align the executive evaluation with the fiscal year and the goals of the agency. And I just think it's important to be, you know, one of the things that's important in terms of benchmarking metrics is to be clear what the goals are for the agency for this current year, which runs through whatever June or whatever it may be, and to make sure that we keep that alignment and process so that what we're looking at in September is going to be performance between September and June, and that, you know, we know that because we want the year to end before we do the evaluation of the year, that there's always this weird lag in the process. But a couple of years we let it go too long, and then we were trying to look back at too long a period. So it's good that we're to a more regular schedule.
Agreed. I think we're caught up now, right? This will really be caught up.
Yes. That's why we put it on the calendar for next September, to make sure that we didn't get off cycle.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. First 90 days. Is that like 100 days, Madam President?
Wow. So thank you, Chair Gunning, and thank you, Secretary Castro and Jonathan. It's just been wonderful to be able to interact with you all in a very different seat now, but moreover to interact with the team in a very different way. And I will say it now and in my little speech here, no regrets. I'm really glad that you selected me. I'm really glad that I am working for such a wonderful, smart, and innovative team that has done everything in their power to protect me during the first 90 days and also to provide me guidance on pitfalls, but also solutions during that period. It has made it a wonderful experience, and I have absolutely no regrets at all. As you might imagine, the first days, 60 to 90 days, it'll actually be 90 days on Thanksgiving, which is one of my favorite holidays. It's been exciting, to say the least. I have spent much of that time studying and researching CalHFA's history, charter, bylaws, their programs, scheduling meet and greets with the staff, and meeting the board members, meeting legislators, meeting other leadership members of this wonderful housing team that the state offers, which includes all the folks under Secretary Lourdes's purview. I've also met with various industry stakeholders and affiliate groups, and I'm compiling all of those learnings and formulating some ideas on how we can maintain the programs that we have, leverage what we have to create more new and innovative programs. And so that is the direction that I'm planning to take the organization. And while I believe that I still have some work to do to get fully up to speed, as I mentioned, no regrets in joining this wonderful organization. I believe that I am in the right place at the right time, not just in my career, but in the spectrum of affordable housing. I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I'm happy to be here. I'm planning to start with meeting the objectives set forth in CalHFA strategic plan. I think it's important that we meet and or exceed those goals. And that would require me to, among other things, stand up existing programs that we are required to do either by statute, contract, or other existing agreements. I'm thinking of the federal agencies as an example that we have to and must adhere to. I'm also committed to managing the human, fiscal, and information and security resources strategically that support these programs, as well as making sure, with a lot of folks' help, that we retain our fiscal health so that we can continue to do the great work that we have done. Finally, it means managing our portfolio and ensuring that that portfolio does not falter. We're still in economic times where we're going through some challenges on the market or through legislator or other things that are happening. And so we have to keep that in mind as part of our three-legged stool. It's not just the new programs, it's maintaining the strength and health of our portfolio, as well as continuing to provide the services needed to support both the portfolio and the new programs. To do that, I intend to foster and continue to retain internal and external relationships, but moreover, set the example. I get it. People are watching me. That's one thing I learned very quickly. You know, I don't even use my Facebook anymore on purpose. Because I don't mind. I miss posting my grandkids, but I don't mind because I think that the work that we are doing is that important. I'm here for a season, and I intend to lead this team through that season and do the best that I can. So with that in mind, I look forward to meeting you in 10 months. I expect to not only meet, but exceed those goals. And I believe that this team is with me on that. So I see nothing but good on the immediate horizon. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Tina. Any comments from board members on that?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead,
First of all, Tina, I'm just very impressed by your leadership style and by how you have stepped in and very much are laser focused, right, on the strategic plan and creating, continuing to build on the culture of CalHFA in terms of the team and the connections to other housing entities and driving our goals around housing preservation and housing production. I will just share, and maybe this goes back to Jonathan's earlier point about when we reconvene in 10 months to evaluate, I think it would be very helpful to share with you all the priorities that we have, that the governor has outlined in the budget and that we're driving towards, just as a framework to help sort of inform and guide the overall effort of CalHFA. So there's basically 6 areas of priorities within the budget that relate to CalHFA. The first, is very much coming out of this pandemic, focusing on homeowner and renter relief. I think the homeowner relief is more in the space of CalHFA, and that clearly, of course, connects to the mortgage assistance program that we're expecting from the federal government at any point. So to the extent that we can include, clearly understanding, how is CalHFA helping us with the deployment of those homeowner assistance or mortgage assistance resources. And I know that this is something that your team is very much on top of, but I don't know to what extent it's embedded in the strategic plan, or it's sort of been a priority within our board meetings. The second area is promoting homeownership. Of course, this is a top priority for CalHFA, and I know today during the board meeting there will be a more detailed presentation on the Building Black Wealth initiative, which I think is very much connected and aligned. But there are additional dollars in the budget, in this year's budget, to expand on CalHFA's work. And then, of course, we know that the treasurer is leading an effort to help inform the framework around a more comprehensive, I guess, set of recommendations on what we can do to increase the homeownership rate across the state. The third priority is continuing to innovate and identifying innovative ways to preserve the state's affordable housing stock. And I think a lot of that rests maybe with HCD, but any initiatives or any efforts from CalHFA, particularly on I think the expiration of some of the covenants that maybe CalHFA may be monitoring. The fourth is production, increasing housing production, and through the process that we're currently going through in terms of helping to inform CITLAC, the Credit Debt Allocation Committee. Of course, our role as state government is to help produce more units that the market is not producing. And that may be low-income units or units at the higher end of the low-income spectrum, right? The fifth is assisting local governments and stakeholder engagement. And this is maybe the space where we call accountability and partnership with local government. So I know you're doing a lot of convening right now and meeting with stakeholders to help sort of overall, to help inform the work that we're doing, but also to be in a place where we can not only provide additional support and technical assistance, but also hold local governments accountable when they're not meeting their housing goals. And that mostly falls on the HCD side, but I do think it's something for us to be sort of all coordinating and working on together. And then the last one is increasing the coordination of the housing finance system, which we're all sort of part of. So I just thought I'd share those. Those are the priorities embedded in this year's budget. We're very focused, of course, on implementing all of the funds, the historic, $10 billion in funding that was included in the budget, $12 billion addressed to homelessness. And so as we pivot and go into 2022, building on the work this year and being able to showcase how CalHFA is helping to move the needle on these items, I think will be very important.
Awesome.
And I'm absolutely thinking about that in a lot of ways already. The staff is we're kind of putting our pencil to pen, and we will be engaged in discussions here coming up, I think starting next month. So hearing from you on that front will help us sort of steer what that engagement might look like. So thank you for that. We appreciate your words and your feedback. Very helpful.
So that I really appreciated hearing that for one thing, because I am very supportive of those goals. But listening to that, the thing that struck me is, part of the oddity of CalHFA as an institution within, but also apart from state government. It's this weird relationship. So what's striking to me is in my recollection and my time on the board, we have never looked at the alignment between CalHFA's strategic plan and the governor or the legislature or anybody else. So I do think it would be informative for the board to see those priorities laid out and look at them to see where they're coherent or not with our current strategic plan, and then for the board to make intentional decisions about whether we want to add things to our strategic plan in order to support those goals. So we don't just assume that there's alignment, but really take a look at it and say, in the case if there is an alignment, do we want to adjust that?
Yeah, Jonathan, I was thinking we should, in fact, Melissa, if you would just share again with the members the strategic plan so we have that in front of us and can take a look at that for ourselves. And then knowing these priorities, that's a good point, Jonathan. For me, I think, Tina, with the retirement of Lori and Tim, that's going to be a big thing, personnel, right? Tim was a force. And so those replacements for both of those individuals, I mean, Lori was critical for me to appreciate, particularly the finances of the agency and all the time I spent with her on the audit committee. So both of those roles will be important that you hire correctly going forward for the year. So I no pressure, but I think that's another thing that's going to fall under your leadership over the next 10 months. Good. All right. With that, has everyone had a chance to look at the charter? I think it was part of the attachments. Seems fairly straightforward, but I'd open it up for any comments from the board members on the charter.
I did take a look at that and appreciate, I think it was last year or the year before, we kind of cleaned it up, and it looks good to me.
Jonathan, do you have a sense, and I'm stepping back a second, if once we do look at the strategic plan, a sense of how we align with the governor's budget priorities? Is it something we do through this committee, or what would be your sense of a process for that?
Well, I think that's something that has to come to the board, because we're talking about the strategic plan of the agency. And so I just think it would make a useful presentation at, for instance, the January board meeting to take a look at that.
Okay, I like that process.
And I know, Chair Gunning, I know that Don has some thoughts on this because he and I have talked about it. Don, you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to quickly share that the governor's priorities, as they're stated when we go through our strategic business planning cycle, are always factored into the development of the business plan. And to the Secretary's earlier points, the enhanced home buyer program, as well as the mortgage relief program, all those things are actually included in this year's business plan as target things that we're going to accomplish. So I think that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, but also I think having perhaps the secretary or one of her staff come at maybe the January board meeting and sort of lay out the governor's priorities as they're developing the January 10th budget and so on would be helpful to, obviously, to your point, inform the board holistically of sort of what the primary goals are. And I think we can be more overt in kind of calling out where we think a lot of the proposed business plan items in the coming cycle, dovetail with those goals of the governor's office. So, I mean, I think we just have sort of taken it for granted in the sense that we obviously do a lot of research. We look at all kinds of market information. We look at what the governor is intending to do, and we factor all those factors into the development of the business plan, and we have for years. So I feel like we're already in good alignment, but I think we can be very more overt about it, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that. Oh, I'm sorry, Tina. I was just going to say that I really appreciate the additional context and what you've laid out. And yes, in January, we can certainly work to present the overview of what the governor's 2022 budget will be, and so maybe you call it being more overt, Don. Yeah, maybe be more sort of calling out the alignment in a more sort of intentional way, because it's there, right? You're right, it's there. It's just not, maybe it's not that obvious to the public. So having the opportunity to be able to do a presentation and have dialogue and discussion with the board in January would be, I think, very helpful.
I
Didn't mean to
agree.
interrupt you, Tina. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing more to add to that. That's exactly the direction that I was intending to go. So that's absolutely something that we can do and should do.
Okay, perfect. Great thoughts. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Secretary Castro Ramirez. Any other committee matters to discuss or questions, comments? I don't think there's members of the public here, Melissa, but I defer to you if we see anyone, or is there anyone from the public that wants to comment?
So we do have one member of the public. If there's a question, please raise your hand. Not seeing a hand raised, I'd say there's no questions at this time.
Awesome. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
So motion, a second, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, thank you guys. See you in a few minutes.
Aye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.